Good to be back. Sorry for the change of schedule. I'm taking another lecture at Temple Manual. It's part of my academic fellowship that I've done this past year, and I'm juxtaposing who's worse, Hamas versus the Nazis. So it's taken a lot out of me. And our first lecture was Friday before Shabbos, and so there's another one coming up in November. Please come, but it's taking a lot out of me, and I'm going to be presenting it in New York with a bunch of donors to this fellowship of all the different things I've done for Israel advocacy. So sorry for the interruption, but here's the other bad news, but good news. I'm just drinking my final Irish coffee so you guys won't get upset. I'm just kidding. Okay. I emailed Larry last night, and I said, I think we aimed for too many classes for this topic. Meaning, Jews see biblical prophets in various ways, and we're going to look at a few other ones, okay? And in Christianity, there's only one way. Is that okay to say? I mean, it's one way, and I'm happy to do it, but I feel like I'm repeating myself over and over again, and it's fun. I mean, we're going to look at some a little bit more painful stuff because of the idea of the suffering servant, and then how post-Holocaust theology and how it relates now to October 7th. But it's the same thing. Okay, you guys got a good taste of the insanity of the way biblical prophets were. But for the last couple sessions, I wanted to be something more open-ended. And so many of you, and I love teaching here, come with a lot of great questions. Someone asked me, they had a strange question. That wasn't strange. It was about, Judaica. I'm going to make this joke because I can. The strangest question I ever got with the best answer was, St. Thomas, St. Thomas, that's what it's called? The kids come annually with their teacher, and they always ask me, can rabbis have sex? And I say, no, but I have 3 kids. And they sit there. So I want this to be more than challenge the rabbi, ask the rabbi, open-ended. We can go back to old slides from the parables. We can go back to the prophets. But there's so much that I can give you. But with regard to how we see the prophets and how Christians see the prophets, it's going to be the same answer. And so I want these last 2 sessions at IPC, I want you to come with a bevy of questions about juxtaposing general Christianity versus Judaism, the parting of the ways, why Christianity did not do X, Y, and Z with regard to the mitzvahs. And we can say in Matthew chapter 5, during the Sermon on the Mount, when Jesus said, I've come not to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law, those who cast one letter away will not enter Basileia, the kingdom of heaven. What does that mean today? And so what would it mean if we went in a time machine and Independent Presbyterian Church in Birmingham, Alabama went to go meet Jesus of Nazareth? What would that conversation look like? What would dinner look like? What would ritual look like? What would worship look like? And we can go down more of the historical Jesus so we can have these conversations. But I just want to be honest from the heart. It's every time we look at a biblical prophecy as Niktav is written in the Tanakh for New Testament writers, it needs to be Jewish. It must be Jewish, Floridian slip. It needs to be Jesus, okay? Questions, comments, concerns, pensées, cogitations. Excogitate. What's the difference between a cogitation and an excogitation? That's for, you can excogitate and you can cogitate. Okay. Very pretentious word. Excogitate or to excogitate. But I can tell you this, the most offensive word in the English language is utilize. It's actually written, Jesus said, you shall not use the word utilize. That's what he said. Do you know why? Utilize requires a physical antecedent. It's like for science people, it's a French word, okay? And so when Delta says, utilize the space in front of you, you can't utilize space. It requires something. And what does utilize mean? Why can't you say, so at USC, I would just destroy them. And utilize, it's just, I actually made a rule in staff meetings, no one's allowed to say the word utilize. Okay. I know, it's I'm so mean. Okay. So again, as I've been saying since day one, the prophets have to tell about Jesus. And on top of that, Paul does something even more liturgically impressive when he talks about, remember, the circumcision not of the flesh, but of the what? Heart. Okay. He quotes Abraham, and how does he make his case for Abraham? Even though Abraham did the whole schnipping, what did Abraham have before he did it? I heard it. I heard of faith. Who said faith? Own it, okay? Go for it, okay? So emunah, so Abraham had faith. He's also, when I was at Vanderbilt, they had a whole class about the Akedah, the sacrifice of Isaac, and the conversation. If God told you that you're supposed to go sacrifice your firstborn son to have this absolute faith, would you do it? And there's one guy, said, yeah, of course. And then there was a psychiatrist in the room. He says, before you do that, why don't you call me? But anyways, there's a midrash, homiletic stories underneath the surface of the text where Rabbi said that Abraham should have said to God, no way, we don't do this. So they have to see faith as a foundational aspect of New Testament praxis. And so if Paul was going to win over his message, not only does he do the prophets, but Abraham as the Wright, the crossover, considered our first patriarch, he had to show before he had halakha, before he had Jewish law, he had faith. We need faith. And in Hebrew, we say emunah. But we don't really say the word like faith. We don't say words like faith, grace. Am I right, guys, Joel? Like, do I go up there and talk about faith or grace? Like, thanks? Yeah, we say anachnu modim lach, like we give thanks, okay? But we have a lot of gratitude. Hoda'ah, also means turkey for Thanksgiving. But we don't, the word faith and grace is kind of absent from Jewish verbiage. So this right here is, again, as we talked about, a very important text regarding the new person, Jesus, who will be commanded. Deuteronomy is probably the oldest book. And then we get to Amos Famous Cookies, and we talk about how the festivals, the sacrifices are insignificant if you're not doing them right. And again, for Christians, especially post-gospel writers, this was a very important message. In order to take the mission to the Gentiles, it's hard to do the law. We don't proselytize. We did it once. The Hasmoneans proselytized the Judeans, the Samaritans, and Inuims after they defeated the Greeks for circumcision or death. Converting someone to Judaism is a really hard sell, and all hot comma of a comma, it's a really hard sell 2,000 years ago, and it is a hard sell today. Who wants to be Jewish? It's a beautiful thing they want to convert. But when we had the first conversion, we looked in the Talmud in Yevamot, we thought the guy was nuts. Like, why do you want to be Jewish? We're beat up. It's not fun, and it's awful. Yes, in Seinfeld you can tell the jokes now, but it's not ideal. So we don't do that, because how do I go and tell someone? Let's say if we're very traditional, and I say you're going to go 0 to 60, you're going to keep kosher, you're going to observe Shabbat, not the way that you have been observing Shabbat, but that Alabama game last night, you ain't turning that on to see the final minute to see Alabama drive and beat South Carolina. When I heard so many congregants saying this game is insignificant, it's going to be a walk. No, that's not happening. And wrapping tefillin, going to shul, praying 3 times a day. No, it's not. It's a hard sell if you're not born. It's a hard sell for Jews. I can't go to Temple Emmanuel and say, we're going to have a kosher kitchen automatically. We're going to have a mechitza. We're going to separate men and women from praying. Only women are not allowed to be called up to the Torah or to have any types of leading the service. It wouldn't go well because there's different movements. So I can't force halakha. You have to come to it. And for Paul, prophets like these, this is an open opportunity to take a bunch of Gentiles who are looking for something in their life for emunah, for faith. If you were in the 1st and 2nd century, whether you lived in Rome and whether you lived in Tarsus and Antioch, northern parts of Israel, and you didn't have means, it's a hard, you're looking for something. You're looking for something. And when you have someone who can, show you the way, the notions of being born again, I understand there was a baptism today, okay, and stewardship. There wasn't a bris. I was disappointed, but that's okay. I think you guys just like me for my incredible jokes. Okay. So, faith, having something to believe in. You like that, Douglas. Having faith. Oh, okay. I have a joke about that. Okay. So, we get to this point of, what it means. Okay? So, the suffering servant, what was I? In Isaiah 53, we looked at it last week. Okay? In the New Testament, especially in the book of Acts or the first book of Peter, it's Jesus, the passion narrative. For those who are not familiar with the passion narrative, it's the Mel Gibson movie. And you know something? I wish he's done so much teshuvah for the Jewish community, but the strangest thing about that movie is when, John, the beloved disciple, wakes up in the middle of the night and he goes, Ma nishna halayla hazeh. That's what we say the Passover Seder. I'm like, why is this night different from all other nights? It was just really weird. Okay. So the way we see now with Isaiah's suffering, and Isaiah's writing to Hezekiah, and he's writing in Judea, modern Jewish thought saw this as not foretelling Jewish suffering, but how we understand tragedy in the face of Jewish life. And so after 1945, we saw the rise of post-Holocaust theology, and it came across different spectrums. You had people like A.B. Wasserman, very strong Orthodox Jews who believed that the Shoah, the Holocaust, had to happen in order to purge Reformed, conservative secularity of Jews among the world. And he died marching to his death, and I'm not taking away his experience. Then you had Melissa Raphael, who found the feminine aspect of God in the concentration camps. I talked about this in Yom Kippur. But we started looking at prophets to see how does God suffer with the people of Israel. And the reason why it's hard to say that, because in Judaism, we don't anthropomorphize our deity, okay? It's hard. And speaking of the passion narrative, or the power of the symbol and the power and the belief of the cross for Christians, it's incredibly powerful. I want to be honest, is that someone who's a man of faith, there you go, Joel. Okay, as someone who loves religion, the symbol of the cross is very powerful for believing Christians. I remember when I moved to the South, I called it the Christian, a lot of Christians here have mezuzahs. You know what mezuzah is? You put in a doorpost. Their mezuzah, on the other hand, is they put the crucifix or the Trinity on the bricks of their homes. You guys know what I'm talking about this? You can see it outlined. And I said, Mom, look. And she goes, I don't see it. I go, look, right there. There's 3 bricks coming out. And I got to tell you, it's beautiful. It's remarkable. I know we're not in the Bible Belt. I know we're in the buckle of that. But that's what you have. And to see in Isaiah 53 predicting the suffering servant who will suffer for the people of Israel, and then through his own suffering, through his own sacrifice, this is the final sacrifice, you'll have everlasting life. Jews, on the other hand, we don't have that. We're left to believe in the unknown. On top of that, if you read the great medieval Jewish theologians, the best, I sound like Israeli, the best, from Saja HaGaon to Halevi, Maimonides, the best. They say if you read the Torah, if you read the prophets, anytime there's a description of what God's doing, God with an outstretched arm redeemed the people of Israel, God can't do that. This is man's language of trying to articulate what God may have done. Why do we say that? God is unknowable. and you're looking at me and saying, what does that mean? God is metaphysical. God exists in a realm beyond Jewish comprehension. We can't ascribe any aspects to God. It's called negative theology, not bad. But if we say God is great, what could we then say? You can say it out loud. You won't get zapped. If we said God is great, God is what? But then what could we also say? What? Blessed, God's a blessed. What if we give any attributes or characteristics? All powerful? Okay, but we say all these things, then what else can we say? Go to the other side. No, I'm trying to push you. I'm trying to say God is not great. That's what I'm trying to say. You could take it away. So for Maimonides, it's like God period, or God is not. God. That's it. Unknowable. God, it's like the star Vega. It's how many light years away, and it hurts our brain to think about it. And that's what, so whenever we see these prophecies, this is what we think God did. Because how can man know what God did? Because we can't hear God's voice. Do you know what happens when we hear God's voice? Done. Or if you see God, I mean, there's all midrashes about how Moses and Abraham and Aaron were able to do these things. And so for Isaiah 53, the suffering servant this is the pivot. That for you to have a new faith, this new faith is going to be in pain. And that, we don't have that in Jew. Well, yeah, we feel pain. I feel pain. Believe me, I feel pain. There's a rabbi. I was at the JCC. Someone said, do you know how to work this machine? They have a new gym there. I said, no. She goes, what do you do? And I said, I'm a personal punching bag. And then I walked away. It's the truth. My emeritus, Rabbi Miller, said being a rabbi is like a full contact sport. And I said, it's good. Okay. Not for Rabbi Grafman, though. No, he didn't. You touched him, he was like, he just, off with you. That was back in the day of when the power of the rabbi. Okay. So for Jews, we have to take someone who's suffering and says, okay, what does that mean? What does that mean? Not there yet. What does that mean? So how do we suffer? We suffer all the time, and then we're supposed to pick up and do it all over. Not all over again. We're supposed to relive Judaism. And I talked about this on Yom Kippur. I talked about God. Where's God when bad things happen? We're supposed to have all this faith. Emunah. So after the Holocaust, the Jewish people suffered immensely. And then after October 7th, two of the most pivotal things in modern and postmodern and contemporary period, how do we rationalize the suffering of the people of Israel? I mean, this is, are we meant to, Jews are saying, are we meant to suffer? But in contemporary Christianity, in praxis and theology, do Christians suffer anymore? Yeah, I would say yes. They're martyrized. I mean, if they're being martyred, I mean, what's going on in Nigeria is unacceptable. There's no news about it. The slaughtering Christians. So the suffering in Isaiah 53 is the most important prophecy for Christians, because the idea that the Son, the Savior, had to suffer, to be that final sacrifice, and in a way, we can read against the text. And what do I mean by that? Do you remember? This is actually how it says Noah was a righteous man. But if you read Isaiah 54:9, it's called the waters of Noah, not the waters of God. And the rabbis, the Midrash teaches us that Noah was just a horrible aloof who didn't help other people, and he caused the flood because he didn't help people change or find the right path, and they rebuke him. And he allowed the flood to happen. Versus people like Abraham with Sodom and Gomorrah negotiating with God, being a defense attorney. We also find this when Moses came down, he saw the golden calf episode, and God wanted just off with their heads. And what did Moses say? If you do this, then I'm done. So in a way, when we read against the text, and this would be a fascinating conversation with Reverend Long and your other faith leaders, and say, Why didn't God say that? How could any entity of mine have to suffer? Where was, I know when Jesus says, in Aramaic, Father, Father, why have you abandoned me? But did the suffering, need to happen to fulfill the message? And that's, I don't know if it's in patristics and in the church fathers, but it's an interesting thing to challenge God. And in Judaism, we're allowed to do that. I don't know what Presbyterians say about challenging God. You can take it up with your rector, okay? Okay, questions, comments, concerns? It says, Mayim in Hebrew, Noach, the waters of Noah in the Hebrew. Yeah, it's not his waters. He didn't say, he didn't make it rain. It's not, no, he was aloof, and a righteous man among his generation. It's because there was nobody, it's a really problematic text when you think about it. And that's what the beauty of Judaism, we talk about this. But suffering, it's a hard concept to think about. Yes? Tell me more. Tell me more. I'm trying to say it one more time for me. Can you? I see. Okay. Douglas, let's go to the Jew in the corner. I want to make a joke. We just celebrated our 10th year wedding anniversary. And I said, Rachel, 10 years of suffering to everyone. And I was kidding. No. I think there's the human condition. I think suffering is physical, it's mental. Sometimes it's beyond our control. I don't know why I was born in the Western Hemisphere to two parents, upper middle class. I think that's just pure luck. Why someone is born to a single family in the middle of nowhere, or someone who don't have their wirings, who have addiction, or mental health illness, or I don't know. I don't know. That's why my Maimonides says God is not involved in this world. God created the world. That's the metaphysics, meaning God can't control outcomes. It is what it is. And it's up to Jewish people to maintain mitzvahs in order to maintain this faith. And it's a pure miracle. And I said this in a Yontif sermon, a high holiday sermon, the fact that the Jewish people are still here today is an utter miracle. Enemies have come and gone. I mean, ancient Easterns, Hittites, Jebusites, Babylonians, Syrians, but we're still here. And what's left are fragments of them in museums, ironically, in Israel. So I think suffering has all different forms of suffering. You physically suffer, you financially suffer. It's life. Parts of it. And my response is, you pray for, Jews can and cannot, whatever, we pray for outcome, but suffering is, it's suffering I would swap out with the word, it's life. I think, yeah, well, we can't, God is God. I think our job is to attempt to know God, and the way we do that as Jews is through mitzvahs, doing mitzvahs. Yes? Yeah, I would agree, and we don't, there's a notion called b'sher, and it's meant to be in Judaism. It's nice when couples get together, oh, it's b'sher, it's meant to be, okay? It's meant to be. Look, I decided to do an extra year of rabbinical school to do the master's of education degree, which turned out to be a fun year, okay? But the good thing was that year is it extended not only did it give me more financial debt, but I had a 6th-year rabbinical school and I had no classes. But during that 6th year, my mom set me up with a beautiful 3rd-year intern at UCLA, a 3rd-year resident at UCLA who is in her 3rd year. I didn't do the ed year. It's weird to think about it, okay? So sometimes things happen that we can't, look, I went to Israel in January. I was wrapping the fill-in in an airport in Paris before I connected over. And the next day I woke up. I went to Jerusalem just to relive my life for the past year. I went to the Kotel, the Western Wall. I wrapped the fill-in. And then I ran into the same rabbi, Chabadnik, just like that, who was in Paris. I go, what are the odds of this happening? And so maybe, I don't know. But suffering is living. And that's, I think, how Christians and Jews have to do, because I don't want to give up Judaism because it makes me happy. I don't think you guys want to give up Christianity because it makes you guys happy. Am I right? Or all y'all happy, okay? But it's, and I believe there's a book, I'm blanking on his last name. He is the best thinker of Jewish mysticism, the Zohar. Matthew Cook, I'm blanking. And when they account for the Big Bang, scientists can speak to a period of time where there was something that happened before the Big Bang, above my head. It's called the God spark. Because things can't be created out of nothing. That's ex nihilo, meaning I don't think things in the universe can auto-suddenly appear out of nowhere how many millions and trillions and zillions of years ago. I think there has to be a source, and that source is God. Okay? Did I answer that question in any coherent sense? We'll talk about, we'll have lunch at Food Bar with, what's his name? Yasha, okay. Okay. All right, so in Micah 1:4, it talks about the Anointed One. Matthew 2:6, it's the Bethlehem, it's the prophecy fulfilled. Okay, you guys can look up, I think it's Matthew 2:6. I'm sure I'm right. I hope I'm right. If I'm not right, I'm sorry. In rabbinic literature, it's just talking about the Davidic restoration with history. From those who took my class when did I teach it? Last year? What does anointed one in Judaism, how do we translate that as? It's Moshiach, but what does Moshiach really mean? Not Messiah. Well, some Jewish movements believe that one figure that Joel and I were talking about earlier is the Moshiach, but it just means anointed one. It means one who's going to come from the Davidic line and reestablish God's kingdom on earth, to reestablish the 3rd temple period, which I got to tell you. One, I'm not the Messiah. I know every mother, there's a belief that every son has the potential to be the Messiah. I'm not him. But second, I don't want the 3rd temple. It's unnecessary for me. I think all the high rises in Tel Aviv, those are my 3rd temples. That's a problem. But it's the embodiment of the new Jew, what we can do. But it's just someone from the Davidic line who's going to be king. Well, for New Testament writers, it has to be both. It has to be Jesus has to be a descendant of Joseph. Even though his father is God, the adoption works. Therefore, the prophecy is fulfilled. And in Micah, anytime Matthew can use this type of quote, it helps with the cause. Oh. Genealogy, I hope I spelled that right. The geographical and theological, all the stuff matters. Because genealogy, where we come from in Judaism, our lineage, progeny. Jesus had to be the one, and that's, when you had Ruth, the Moabite, she always referred to the Moabite, by the way, never the Israelite when she does her, crossing over. David is descendant of Ruth. And then Solomon, and then Jesus represents the Moshiach and the Melech and the king and the sovereign. I know it's kind of like Dan. Remember the Dan Brown book? Like Mary, they had a baby, and the baby was a girl. Well, the reason why it was really cool, you guys may think differently, but not only was she in the Davidic line in the tribe of Judah, but Mary Magdalene comes from the tribe of Benjamin, was a descendant of Saul. So you had like double monarchical blood to fulfill her. Anyways, I like to be the king of Israel. I would like to change my name. David was red hair. David had red hair, so I become King David II. I thought it'd be a nice name. King, yeah. The lineage, the progeny. The genealogy of Jesus is chashuv, so important, and that's when you see Matthew, does the whole preamble, right? John was in the beginning. There was the word, okay, but Matthew does the whole family reunion, okay? So you have proper lineage. Like this is the thing I'm going to ask when my daughter's date. I'm going to ask for lineage, okay? Second, you like that, don't you? Second, actually Maisie, she's nuts, so if she gets married, I'll be thrilled. Okay. Second, the geography, okay? And Beit Lechem, the location, was also very important, okay? Bethlehem is a huge area, okay? And the theology matters in order to make this stick, to make it land for believing Christians. Okay? So in Jeremiah in 31, it talks about a new covenant, a new brit. And it talks about a lack of a new brit. It doesn't talk about halakha, Jewish law. For us, it's not we don't get rid of the law. Meaning we own up to what we do, and we still do the mitzvahs. We still do the commandments. But it's not just a Torah on the heart. This is Paul's thesis. Judaism cannot be a religion solely on faith. We need laws and what we can do and what we cannot do. Everyone doesn't like Yom Kippur because they can't eat. I love Yom Kippur. I hate Passover because we really can't eat for 8 days. But it's the most halakhically strict Jewish holiday that there is. But without laws, we are meaningless, like society. Okay, so in Hebrews 8 through 10, it's that this new brit, it's overriding, it's done. So the Torah, it's a kind of a paradox to the Sermon on the Mount. Sermon on the Mount meaning when Jesus said, I come not to abolish law, but to fulfill the law. They said, nope, that story is over. Again, it's the same idea. You have to part of the ways. This is why I'm going on repeat a lot. Okay? And finally, okay. Palm Sunday, Jesus 21, when he enters when he comes to Jerusalem. And Jews just see it as messianic hope. Christians see it as their Messiah. We see it as our Messiah. That's it. And not to be so simplistic, but we see it differently, and Christians see it differently. That's it. Zechariah 9:9. The donkey and the king. Okay? Final questions, comments, concerns. Because the last two questions, I want it to be a free-for-all of the theater of theological absurdity. I said theological absurdity. Come with questions. I'll bring my slides. We can go whatever. But There's so many things I can teach you, and every time I find something, it's just, we see it as a hope for our Moshiach, and you guys see it as your Mashiach. And I just kind of picked apart different important sections of the prophets. Final questions, comments, concerns? Yes. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I would say one, it's really easy to pound the Christianity when the Roman Empire becomes the Holy Roman Empire. Okay, I just think with that move changed history. Second, Jews believe when this Moshiach figure appears, that's it. That's it. It's the end of the world. It's not, I mean, it's, you know. Yeah, I mean, but we don't do the second coming. I mean, some Jewish movements talk about a figure coming back and living in an area in Tel Aviv, and you know, he's a very influential rabbi. He never called it. But that's it. We don't, and we live in the now, not for that. Go ahead.
I was counting the years. 20 years ago, I had the experience of studying the book of
Well, there's a notion not that God dies. It's a notion called Hester Panim, like the hidden face of God, that God removes himself when Jews sin. I don't believe, it's just, each person will think what they think. And for me as a Jew, I don't think God causes bad things. I can't. If I did, I wouldn't be in this business. And so I don't know why one gets cancer or why one doesn't get cancer. I think I can't rationalize in my mind why October 7th happened. I can't rationalize why Holocaust survivors were burnt alive in the state of Israel. Or I can't rationalize why bad people get away with crimes and never get caught. You never know, and I can't rationalize, you know, it's just, there's way sports, I mean, it's just, it's life. Another hand. That's just the, Jewish history, I mean, that's the end of the world, as we see it. New Testament, you know, you have the rapture, you got the, you know, like the battle. When the Mashiach comes, it's, you know, I'm not gonna have a bad stomach anymore and psoriatic arthritis. That's the whole point. It's just going with Jews. We got bad stomachs. Final questions. Oh, if you guys want to, here's a great, not modern, but if you really want to understand rabbinic process, there's a book called Back to the Sources, called by Barry Holtz, I believe, Back to the Sources. It understands the rabbinic framework and how Jews do Judaism. It's called Back to the Sources. Okay? Azaka Baruch, thank you guys. I'll see you next Sunday, right? No, in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, and then a week after that, okay? Thanks for modifying it. And come to Temple on the 13th if you want to see juxtaposing Hamas versus the Nazis. That's what I've been working on, and it's just sucked the life out of me. Thank you, guys.